And also other issues was the connections overhead. I think it was the stateless is what I can explain here is that means the client don't need to remember the previous sessions or the communication. So every communications comes as a new, doesn't keep the states of the communications. So before I jump off this slide, just that the major problem with HTTP was sending informations in plain text or unencrypted, which is a very nice word. Okay, so now when those issues became a problem, that some people had to go back and then see, okay, now how do we address these issues? And that's when they introduce another protocol called the HTTPS, which is basically the same protocol, but now it's secure. And how is it secure? In that we are now going to turn the other plain text into unencrypted communications, such that now no one is able to sit in front or like tap our communications. But now how is that done is you have been doing cryptography. You heard about the public private key encryptions, and this is what happens here. So just to element understanding that you just need to know that when the communication is being done through the HTTP, that means all the communication is going to be encrypted. So it's only people who have the key is able to get the communication. So all this is going to be the properties of the HTTPS. So we now ensure that we have integrity. It ensures there is trust. And that's why you see when you're browsing on a website, then you see a website have a padlock. That means it's trusted. But also when it comes to web application security, we also understand that not all the websites that have a padlock displayed shows like it is okay. Let me switch the screen. I know someone's like, what's the padlock you're talking about? But if you see our main platform here at LAN, then you can see that this is the padlock I'm talking about. And this shows that this website is using HTTPS, and you can see even here. So, but doesn't mean that it's now secure. There is a way we can abuse this. And then also the bit of authentications. So all this was implemented using the secure socket layer. Initially was called like that, but now we call it the transport layer security, the TLS. So these are interchangeably used. But now the HTTPS combine the HTTP and then the TLS, and that's what becomes the HTTPS. So that means the communication is done, but it's going to be protected by some kind of private public key. And now how the TLS works is kind of what we know, that is the three-way handshake, that the client sends the message to the server, the hello message, then the server reply, then the client say, I want to communicate with you, and then the server asks, okay, I'm fine, what is the protocol do you want to communicate? Then okay, HTTPS, then they agree on some terms and conditions, which is the exchange of the keys, which the symmetric key, which we are talking about, the public private key. And then when we exchange the keys, they agree on that, and now they start transferring data, and that's going to happen at the applications level of the OSI reference model. So the three-way handshakes you always talk about, is that what happens there. So by the time they agree to send the data, every communications is going to be encrypted. And just like was said, this picture shows you basically what they talk about. So I think the best terms they call it the synchronization is then the acknowledgement, which is called the act. And then when the acknowledgement, that's when everything is agreed, and now they start sending the data at the application data here now. So everyone who is at the Faculty of Computer Science and Information Technology, this is already taught at the actual, I think in a semester one, something of that kind, but we're just making a review. So everything which is done here is, I think I will just hint something little about on certificate authorities, which are issued by the authorized companies. So every computer that comes, or the Windows, you install the operating system, you told us already the trusted certificates in the system. But we will not go deep there because there is what we call the soft science certificates that we can also create for ourselves. But what I can explain here is how this data is transmitted in this picture here. That the sender sends the plain text and then it's going to encrypt it using the public key, which is made available to everyone, but then the private key is made secret. So they have some algorithms that they use to encrypt the data. And now when the data is going through the internet, it's going as a ciphertext, which is encrypted data. And then when it reaches on the other side, it's going to be decrypted by the private key. And then it's into plain text, that's when you're able to read. And this is what we call the end-to-end encryptions, something similar to what happens in the WhatsApp applications. When you're talking to someone, the server already has the public key. Then you WhatsApp, which you install on your phone, it's as the private. I don't know whether I'm explaining it well, but because when you send the data, your data is going to be encrypted at the server point using your public key, and then it moves through the internet. And then when it reaches back to the client side, it's going to be decrypted by the private key. And now you see the data coming back like, hello, how are you? How was the football yesterday? That's not how that data flows through the internet. When it's flowing through the internet, it's already in ciphertext. But now when it reaches to you, it's going to be decrypted in a way. And now you see it is a plain text. I don't know whether I've explained it and that's how it works, but that's how I understand it. Okay, so everything about HTTP is still working well. And this part here is just telling us the trust model behind the HTTPS talk about the cryptographic protocols, the digital certificates, and the certificate authority. You can take your time and read this content. I'm not going through. So other points going to talk about the trust verifications, and I think this is something important that sometimes when you're selecting your the trusted certificate authority, you need to be a trusted companies, because issues going to arise when the trusted companies is compromised, or there's some just people doing their things on the dark web, and then you end up getting the certificates from already compromised certificate authority. That's going to be a better issue to yourself. And so any others that you can still go through, this content is going to be shared to you, as well as the benefits and then the challenges that comes with the certificate authorities. Okay, I need to move to where is a point of interest in these slides. So now, not everything was good with the HTTPS. Time come also some problem, some of the issues started to arise. Like you can see here that if the HTTPS is not properly handled, then there is a way that attack can potentially hack the protocol. And what happens is compromising the outside control of the client and the server. In other words, what they're trying to talk about, if they the threat actors in a way that find a way that they compromise the entire certificate authority issuers, and then they break into this, then they can manipulate a lot of things. They will compromise the entire DNS and then change a lot of protocols. imagine that you have these two websites. This is what I was talking about, that all these two protocol, rather URLs, they are using HTTPS. And now let's do some engagement here. Sorry. You see, we have this HTTPS twitter.com, and then there is also another one, also twitter.com. And let's say this is A, this is B. Who can tell us which one is having issues? This is A, this is B. All of them are using HTTPS. I just need one person to unmute and say, then other people can put in the chat. Okay, I can see people talking B, someone say A, and then I see B. Nice. I see A, see B.
I think A has
And I
issue.
see A. Yes?
Maybe A
Okay, I
has
think
an
we have
issue.
enough answer here. Someone saying twitter.com is not real. Someone hinted that the one with one. Okay, let's check. So we can see this is using HTTPS and this is Twitter, but here is, and this threat actors is not even smart enough because this one can easily be seen. I think just because maybe some of us are cybersecurity aware, but to someone in the village who might have never attended any cybersecurity training, is not going to notice that this is, it's just going to read this as twitter.com. And yet this is not the domain of twitter.com, yet this is. And now when you go to this, click, and then you are going to log in, now means this is kind of a phishing attack. But so that's what I was telling, that you don't need to trust every website that have a padlock, because there is a way they can be manipulated. Now that and next threat attack is going to be smart. Next time you're going to see I here is going to be similar to this. And so since this is also a cybersecurity awareness month, we should be very vigilant when we are looking at the URLs that being sent to us before clicking into it. Because what we could do is to just put hi and put a punicode, something like there are some characters in Chinese or whatever, Japan, and it's going to put some dot on top here, but it's a kind of a punicode kind of manipulations, and this one is going to appear like a high dot. So you may end up finding yourself being phished, or like a malicious URL being sent to you, and for their intended purpose, which is not the topic of today. But this is what I wanted you to be. So now this part will take someone through how to deploy HTTPS, HTTPS, installing the certificates authorities in your server, which we're not going to do today, as well as redirecting HTTP to HTTPS. And I think I can pause here a bit to talk about that. Someone is going to ask me a question in the middle of that, but still I see my website for my company, it still uses HTTP. Yes, it's going to use HTTP. And this is what I know, that when you're using HTTP, the way the data is going to be communicated, actually the performance wise is fast because of reduced complexity in key exchange, whatever. But now when a website starts to move to a sensitive data, where the sensitive data are communicated, somewhere you're going to see it switching to HTTPS. Actually, I have to tell you that you will still find some other companies running some other websites using HTTP, just because they know all the contents there are not sensitive. But the moment it tries to shift to another sensitive resources being communicated, you will see some redirections being done from HTTP to HTTPS. So when you click a website, at certain point first come to HTTP, then somewhere later on it will turn to HTTPS. Yeah. So we will have to appreciate that till now we're still using HTTPS. But then when we release the security issues, most of as the time goes, now the HTTPS wasn't enough to protect the website or the web applications. So some other kind of security needed to be added in order to ensure there is security. And this is what I'm going to talk about is the content security policy, which we call the CSP. And for anyone who is taking career in web application security, you should know that this is a feature, additional feature that is added to a web applications. And it has so many settings or configurations that you need to apply, talking about how the Java script resources is being shared in across origin resource, something call it the course, which we shall still understand it. But essentially, the CSP tells your browser to know which domain should fetch the resources from, and that's where you limit the restrictions from. It's a very good thing, but also if it's improperly implemented, it can be abused, and that is what some of the challenges comes from around there. What we should know that is the CTF exercise that is going to be happen is to test your skills and then develop your skills on implementing efficient security defense in a fact that it cannot be abused. But more of this is going to be communicated. So I know I was very fast because we wanted to catch up with time. But when you look at, I have completed this. Now I have to move to the second part, which is the common vulnerabilities, which exist in web applications. Now, something which I was supposed to speak at the beginning is that the web application or website is popular and is going to be popular because it's kind of provide a friendly user interface communications. Because if you see, even in automations, when the automation is done, there's somewhere that it needs to be connected to a dashboard for easy monitoring. And now when it's connected to that, it means it's going to run on a website. So that's why website will be popularly used. And now someone who is taking career in web application security, this is going to be still a great opportunity again and again. Okay, now that we know what a website is, how a website how website works, and then some of the security issues that were coming through the website, we need now to go deep and then look at what are the vulnerabilities that are mostly affecting the web applications. Now, I need to tell you, I'm not going to go through notes teaching, but I just need to tell you where to look at. And then what to go back and read about. So there is what we call the OWASP, which is the I think is they call the Open Web Application Security Project. Yeah, if I'm not forgetting. So this was majorly developed by some communities of people, so that whoever is developing their web application security, you need to check your web application security against those vulnerabilities. Basically, they are the vulnerabilities which can be exploited. There are threats which can be exploited. I mean, the vulnerabilities can be exploited by the threats. I don't know, I can explain it very well. So now, but then it became a standard. Now that everyone who is developing the web applications, and then before you push it to the production environment, you need to check your web project against those vulnerabilities. Now, so this is what I have here. So it starts growing year by year. Like you can see, it was first standardized in 2017, and this is at the top 10, ranging from injections, and my screen is going to be small, but I don't want to make it too big so that I can miss other content. So it started from injections, broken access control, all the way to insufficient loading and monitoring. And then in 2021, it was then updated. And now when you see, and now the way you see them ranking from number 1 to 10, that means those are also the way they were commonly exploited. Most of the attacks was happening like this. You see in 17, injections was ranked as number 1. That means around the world, injections was a nonsense. And then in 2021, now you can see something changes here. Injection goes to number 3, then broken access control comes to number 1. But then we start to see that also some new vulnerability starts to come, like insecure design, software and data integrity failures, and then server-side request forgery came in place. Okay. Now, someone who wants to understand the security of web application security need to know all these OWASP top 10 attacks or vulnerabilities, whatever. And now in this white paper, you can read more about it, but you can see that it's still 90% of the applications suffers from the broken access control, as well as injections. Okay, now we not only, as you see, time keeps going, we didn't remain only on web applications. Some other technology starts to come in place, like what we call the API, which is the applications programming interface. And this is, I think, now what is common to everyone. But if you're not familiar with what API is, it basically is, it's like, I know the common term most of the white papers describe API is like a waitress that comes and takes your order and then deliver your order to the chef. So it communicates, it makes communication in communications between various applications. So imagine a waitress has to know all the languages. So even if a Chinese guy enters into the restaurant, it's going to get the food because the waitress knows all the language, goes and speaks the Chinese in Chinese, then goes back to the chef and then speaks in another language, like, I don't know, we can use maybe Uganda. So the API is put in the middle to make communications between different applications. And that's this application, that's what we're using commonly these days. You can get a proper definitions of what API is. So now API is doing a very great job, and as well they will always have security issues. So these people also are still doing a great work, and they also developed the OWASP top 10 API security risk, which you can see here, and this is as of 2023, which is the broken object level authorization, something which we know, authentications, and all the way to misconfigurations. If you see them, they are also somewhere similar, because we also have a misconfiguration somewhere here. And also we have the broken access control. So they are not any different. You can see the server-side request forgery also existing here. So now, for you to have a better understanding of the security features of the web application, then you need to be familiar yourself with all these OWASP top 10. Not only API, we also other technologies started coming in place, like the artificial intelligence, and basically the backbone here is the large language modules. Now, it also introduces risk, and then for everyone who is looking at integrating AI solutions, then you need to also be familiar and know all these LM risk. And these people still do a great work, and this is as of 2023 to 2024. Watch very careful, things are going to change here. So if you are lagging behind, you will lag behind, because you can see in 2017 we released this, and then not longer in 2021, and I know even up to now they are going to release another OWASP top 10. So as you see, this is of 2023. Anytime you may see 2025 or 2026, whatever it may be. So for LLM, you can see we have the prompt injections, which you should know, like everyone now is using AI in their day-to-day life activities. But then as you use it, then you should know that there are also security risks. What we can explain here is the prompt injection. Basically, an attacker manipulates the AI response by sending a malicious or a manipulated a request to the LM, and then it induces the LM to return a data that is not supposed to be returned. And this has been a major problem and is still a major problem. But others still comes to the sensitive information disclosure, which happens both to the web applications, to the API, and now it's happening to the LLM. And all the way to data poisoning, and then we also have the excessive agency. So now, to have a better understanding of how this technological risk happens, how do they come about, how are they exploited, you need to familiar yourself with all of this. Okay, so I'm going to pause a bit while I share this, some of this in the chat. Yeah, so now I know someone is like, but okay, now what do they do? What do they mean? It's something that we cannot exhaust them. That now that I have shared you with the resources, you can go and look into them. Like if we're talking about the broken access control, what does it mean? How does it occur? And then how is it exploited in the real world? But fortunately, when we are demonstrating some of the challenges in on our platform, then we will be picking some of them, and then we'll show you how this vulnerability arose, how it came, where it came from, the OWASP top 10 here, where was the problem, and then how it can be exploited, then how you can mitigate it. Okay. I'm assuming we would be moving well, unless and someone is saying, Madam, you are too fast. I don't know whether it's meaning Madam in the classroom, but I'm not a lady, I'm a man. Yeah. Oh, we don't have time. So I need to be fast because other resources we need to cover. And just like I said, I have not come to teach everything, like what access control means, then explain what, but I'm just showing you where you need to go and look at. All right, we need to proceed. So, okay, something which I didn't talk about is the blockchain. And so the blockchains is also one of the modern technology that is taking shape in the security of the world. And basically, I am very happy that even when we were launching, I saw some people already taking interest in the blockchain development. And so, which I didn't pick the resources here, but some of the things that when you're developing applications using the blockchain like Ethereum, you need to also consider the risk that's associated, which is, and by the way, we're going to have challenges also under blockchain if not, but it has to be there. So you need to also know the risk, the security risk that comes from the blockchains. And I think one of them is also called excessive agency. There is a way when you're developing that maybe we want to transfer the money from the account A to account B. So if your code is not properly implemented in a way that someone can transfer more money than exists in the account, I think that's what we call reentrancy, if I'm not forgetting. But it is a very big, good place of discussion. So now we need to look at the tools that you will need, particularly in these preparations for the competitions, and as well as a general career development. Now, when it comes to testing the web application security, there are so many tools that are available. And then tools are just tools. You are still supposed to be the person to do the right thing, because if you just have the tools, like I remember when I first started this career, and I knew everything was about tools. So I was installing each and every tools. The Ash Crack, I had the John the Ripper, those big tools. But still I wasn't doing nothing, because personally me, I didn't know how to use the tool, where to use the tool, and what time to use the tools. And then, so you as a person, you first need to develop yourself to understand the concept. And that's when you can then make the tools into the basic. Otherwise, the tool is going to be useless. But also, I want to make you know that knowing very many tools is also key, because there's a point that a tool is going to fail, but then another tool is going to solve the problem. Okay. So now let's look at some of the few tools that we can use. And in my list here, I'm put the dev tool, which is like development tools. And if you see the name is like something big, but there's nothing. Like when you're on your website like this, and then let's say we're on LAN, and you can just right click and then you go to inspect. And so when you come to inspect, now you can see there is the tool menu is here, inspector, and then we have the console, and then we have the debugger, and then network tab, all the way to applications. So what all this makes a dev tool, which we are talking about, and it's something that is also very useful. Sorry, maybe I'll need to take water. It's very helpful when you're looking at the security, what's happening behind in the communications of the website. Like under consoles, you will get some errors, and also this is a point where you can run some JavaScripts. Yeah, so a dev tool also have a debugger. This is where you can see some of your files that is loaded, that every time the applications, the website loads, it's going to load some of the resources like JavaScript, the CSS. So all those files, you can see them. And this is very important, because when it comes to the client side validations, we're going to find some juicy JavaScript here. In web application security, when we talk of juicy, means we're going to find something that we can exploit. Maybe there is a misconfiguration, there is a vulnerability. So to us, the security testers, we call that to be juicy to us, which is not good for a defender. And then this is the network tab, and when you load the websites, all the content is going to be loaded here. And also this part is very important, because this is where you will see all the HTML, the CSS, and then the JavaScripts that are being sent. And when you click on one, you will be able to see what the request is can be, and what the response also be. So it's very important, because at this point you can see the server is responding okay to us, but then some of the headers are available here. Like you can see the server is here running on Nginx 1.28. I know some folks who already somewhere into web application security start to smile at this point. So there are some other resource informations that are available to us, like also the user agent. Okay, so another thing that is going to be juicy, it's under storage. Now under storage, this is where you're going to find things like the cookies comes to be stored, and sometimes some of them is stored in the local storage. So it depends on how the developer has implemented it. But every time you comes to storage, you would want to look at the cookies and see what type of cookies is being set by the application is setting which cookies. Now cookies, which is a very sensitive data to us, basically sometimes they're called sessions. I know, like when you talk about cookies, people are like, what is cookies? Cookies, there's one cookies where we just go and buy from supermarket and put. But also there is a cookie which is looking at the activity of a user on the website. But then there is also a session cookie that keeps the identifies each and every users onto the server. So this is where they're keeping its state. And that's why when you're on a website, you don't need to log in each time and again. Just because you already have the session cookies and the server knows you somewhere. So when you take a request, they go, okay, server just go and checks like, okay, I know you want this, okay. Yeah, it's fine, you can get it. And if you're not authorized to do that, then it's going to reject that. So sessions is going to be a most critical part to everyone that is looking at the web application security. Your height should be around somewhere there. Yeah, so this is the dev tool. I've just talked about the overview, but a lot of things can be done in the dev tool, which as time goes, you will develop your experience and knowledge, and then you make the best use. But I tell you that someone can just use the dev tool even to test the security of the website or web application just using this tool. But like I said, then one tool sometimes may not be able to do another tool. So we need to use other tools. And this is where the proxy comes in. And now, what are proxies? Let me check my chat. I don't want to leave someone behind. The chat is still okay with this gentleman and madam. So let's proceed. Okay, so now when it comes to proxies, we have so many works, but by definition, what we understand, a proxy is just like a server that is going to sit in the middle and then is able to redirect your traffics to the point of need. So it depends on the configurations you have given to them. So that means it is going to sit between the web application, the client, and somewhere we have the server. So your request first comes from the client, which is the web browser, then goes through the proxy, then reaches the server. So this person is sitting in the middle, he has controls of everything. Now, it has a nice control that it can also manipulate some other things before it sends to the server here, and as well as also receive from the server and then manipulate some other things and then forward it to the web, depending on its interest. Actually, it's something very nice. Okay, so to one who is who need to know the web application security, need to know that we have a proxy called the Bab Suite, and this comes pre-installed in Kali Linux. but you can also install it on your Windows environment. And then we have the ZAP proxy, which is also good. And then we also have the Kaido, which is also good. But now, I think everyone likes their own tool because of what they know. But in this basic, and for you as students to prepare you for these competitions, BAP Suite would be something you should consider because it's easy to use and it comes already pre-installed. Even these other ones, you can actually the current Kali Linux that comes with Kaido. So feel free to use it. So I think some disconnection might have happened in Evan, but we can proceed. Now, for this purpose of demonstrations, and what I recommend you is, okay, I'm not going to recommend you can use, but of choice, a BAP suite would be something you should consider. Okay, so now, someone like now, but okay, BAP suite is going to be a user interface. It's kind of a graphical user interface, but behind it, it's some kind of Python automations being done. So if I know Python, why would I need to use BAP suite? That is not. You can, if you're good in Python, then you can just go ahead and do all your automations using Python. But this is going to be a great work because we have too much things before us which we need to work. So BAP suite does all this work, and thanks to Port Swigger that developed this tool. I don't need now to know much of the Python because I have the BAP suite that has already done everything automations for me. And we'll see how this works. Okay. Now, before we will move to demonstrate how this BAP suite is work, we should also know that there are so many other tools that comes. I'm going to be launching this tool, by the way, when I come to my terminal. But there are so many tools that comes with the Kali Linux, and please don't get worried. Last time I remember one of the instructor told us that you can still run Kali Linux in Windows environment. So if you don't have Kali Linux or you don't know virtualizations, you can still run Kali Linux on your machine. But all these tools can still be installed in your environment. So some other tools that you will work with is the Darbust, which is also comes pre-installed. In fact, when you come to your Kali Linux, and then need to make this screen bigger probably, and then you type Dab, now you will see the color change, and that means the tool exists. And so what this tool is going to do is used for endpoints enumerations. And then now what we want to know is what are endpoints. So when we have a website like this, and then sorry, okay, what comes after here is the endpoint. Let's say we have admin, maybe admin.php or even just /admin, or sometimes we can have a /finance. So these are endpoints, and so we can still have others still going ahead. So it doesn't stop on one, it can be many. So the Darbust is going to help you to enumerate these endpoints that exist on the main domain. And it does that by using a word list. And all of us by now should know what a word list that we have a list of common words like /admin, /finance, /robots.txt, and so many in your files. So that's the word list. So what the tool is going to do is going to run against against this, and then tries to enumerate the /admin/robot.txt. Okay. And then so many other tools that can be used. We have the FAF, and if you don't know them, don't worry, because even DAB can do the same thing. And I think for these preparations, even DAB is enough. But there are other tools. There is also Ferox, Buster. But you don't need to know this. I told you that being a human is a human, but tools are also just tools. And so many, which we cannot exhaust them. So those are some of the tools that it will be helping you when it comes to testing the security of the web applications. Okay, now I'm going to reduce the speed a bit because some people finds it hard, which is very understandable. Well, so now before I move to the next step, that means I'm going to do some wrapping of so far what we have covered. But I will only start from here. That when we're looking at the web applications, we know that there are some vulnerabilities that exist in the web applications, and then how they can be exploited that can cause a threat to an organization. And then it is normally listed on a standard, which we call it the OWASP Top 10. And this OWASP Top 10 was first developed in 2017. And this were most of the attacks that was happening in the websites. That it became a standard that whoever is developing web applications should check their application against these attacks before pushing the applications to the environment. In 2001, new vulnerable attacks arise, which means it's coming from vulnerability existing in the web application attack surfaces. But as also, we've seen changes that now the ranking changes. The one which was ranked number 1, which was means it was happening most in the world, goes to number 3, and others goes to number 7. And also others from the bottom goes up. So other technologies also came in place, like the API, which normally is the way applications communicates. And the risk that comes to them were also ranked, and now it has also become standard. We are calling it the OWASP Top 10 API security risk of 2023. We've seen issues of broken access level, which all the details, you can read them from here. Unrestricted sensitive business flows, which all the details you can read here, which means someone just protect the login point but doesn't protect the /admin. So anyone can just navigate to the /admin without even logging in, and is already having the access. A new tool a new tab comes, what we call the server-side request forgery, and you can read from here. So adversaries, in a way, manipulate the server to perform actions that they're not supposed to perform. And then when artificial intelligence comes into place, there also comes the risk. And then a standard was also developed, ranging from product injections, misconfigurations, and then the unbounded consumptions, which all the details you can read from them. So before I was closing here, that one needs to go through this and understands at basic level how this vulnerability comes, how they are exploited, and then how they are mitigated. So we then move into looking at some of the tools that someone needs to know when it's testing the security of the web applications API, and then the dev tools, which is normally found on the browser, whether you're using Chrome or Firefox browser. It's just a matter of right-clicking anywhere on the page and then goes to inspect. And when you go to inspect, now you will have the entire tool menu. The collections of all these tool menu makes what we call the dev tool. the console shows you some errors that are associated when you're requesting a resources, and as well as you can run some of the code. The debugger shows you all the resources when the page loads. And that's where I said that this is a point of interest, because we somewhere will start to see some nice data coming from here for those developers that like client-side validations. The network tabs also shows you how the resources are loaded, telling you all the CSS JavaScripts available, but then goes ahead and then tells you the request header, the response, which for people who were at the beginning, which shows that it's very important for us to view these headers, because some of the things starts to become nice. We can see the cross-origin policies being set here. And then I remember we talk about the server header also being returned back to us. So one of the thing interesting. Sorry. Yeah. So sorry for that brief interruptions. Okay, we need to proceed. Yes, so under storage, cookies and local storage is something that you would want to keep your eye keen. Just I was explaining that the sessions cookie is something very sensitive, because this is how the server is going to know each and every client who is requesting resources. So, and there's a way they implement their access role depending on the role that you're supposed to farm in something that we call authorization. And that is good for us when we want to abuse those authorizations. So for this case, this application is setting a cookie, which is similar to this, but not all applications going to set cookies. Some of them sets different cookies, like the JSON web token are commonly used these days by the modern web applications, but still they're not secure. And that's also one of the things that any web person and the web category in this CTF, those are things that one should expect. Okay, so then we'll talk about the proxies that basically it's a server that sits between the client server, and then it's able to intercept requests from the client while it goes to the server, and as well as from the server back to the client. And we say that we can do a lot of manipulations at the proxy level here. So some of the proxies which we commonly use is the BAP suite that comes pre-installed. All these can be put into your environment. And for these demonstrations, we will be using BAP suite. But they do the same thing. And then some of the tools which we talked about that are all available in the Linux environment is the Darbuster, which is used for endpoint enumerations. I demonstrated that. If you want to know other resources that are available on the same domain, we can use BAP. Again, it's a word list that we have. So all those word lists, they're already in your Kali Linux environment. But if I don't have, then I can still develop. It's just a matter of creating files, then I start creating these commonly used endpoints. And that's very good to me, because I always prefer to have my custom word list, depending specific to the applications I'm testing. Because I need to first understand my applications. What is the application used for? Because there's a possibility you're going to pick a word list and start dumping it on an airline company, and basically doesn't even some of the resources there doesn't really apply, and that is too much noisy to someone. A good security tester should be someone who has little noise when he's testing the applications to avoid being caught. So as you develop your level with time, you will learn that you need to develop your own custom word list. So some other tools that we talk about is the FAF that also does the same endpoints enumeration, Ferrobuster. We also have GoBuster, but then maybe what I didn't talk about is that the FAF can also do subdomain enumerations that we are going to have like student.learn.ug, or we can have teachers at the same point here, or principals. So those are subdomains that is served on the same main domain, which FAF can also do the enumerations. But the concept remains the same, that it's going to still enumerate against a word list. And so that means word list is an important thing. Okay, so because the speed was kind of above, but because we have little time, that's why we had to go back and then try to make sure everyone is on the level. Okay, now what is going to, how do someone approach a web challenge? Because I know I might have been talking and someone like, what is this man talking about? You really don't know. So you need to know how to approach a website, especially when it comes to solving CTF challenges. So now I'm going to be giving some tips and tricks. That means I'm going to combine this number 4 and number 5. As I solve these challenges, I will be giving my approach and what your approach should be and what you can add. I know everyone has their approaches. You know, we just keep learning from each other. You pick from someone you had on yours, or you also, I mean, no one is a master here. You can also teach another person. And now this is the biggest part that is going to, and that's the sense part of these sessions here. So now before I jump to that, I will check my chat again. Okay. So I see no questions. Let's proceed. So what we're going to do here is to solve some of the CTF challenges that we have been uploading on our web platform. And then as we do that, we shall be giving some tips and tricks, and then we shall be talking about how to use these tools, and then we shall be talking about where was that vulnerability coming, what was the issue, how was it exploited, and then how we can mitigate it. Okay. So when it comes, I am sure that everyone now has created account on this platform. I see a numbers of users here, varying universities, and that is very good. Now, everyone, when the competition starts, you will come to challenges, and then you will find challenges ranging from categories. The Linux basics that was already instructor went through it. Cryptography, I think this has also been gone through, and now we have web security, which is what we're looking today. Okay, so when you learn on this, you will find a challenge. The only thing is to click on the challenge, and at that point you will find no solve, 0. But right now we have 118 solve. I don't know, because we have close to 200 I think students, and we have only 50% have solved this challenge. Now when you read into a web challenge like this, the first thing is to look at the name, and then you look at the points. and the difficulty. All these things tells you how is this challenge going to be, because first the name might hint you to what the challenge is about. And then the point is very important, tells you what I should focus most. Because if I'm solving this challenge, inspect it, there's only 50 points, but others have 300, 500, and this is taking my time, I can't solve it, then I don't need to waste time on it. I need to go to another challenge which has point. Because the most important thing is to appear top on the scoreboard. And this is what students should put in their heart. I have to be on the scoreboard. Okay, now, one thing which is already trick, I told you to look at the name of the challenge. Somewhere it may hint what the challenge is about. And then the description is sometimes helpful, but sometimes may not be helpful. But please don't ignore. This one is saying, do you realize that developers leave sensitive information in the code? Check my cool website. And the website is available here, and the author is Joel. So what you have to do is, sometimes you may find it's put file down, but sometimes they just put under hyperlink. So the only thing is to right click on it and open in a new tab. And then the challenge will opens. This is a web applications which is running on this IP address and on port 7000. So far, that's the information we have. And then say, hidden in plain sight. Welcome. Mission is to find the flag hidden within the web application. Sometimes most vulnerable secrets are hidden. But I need to show you that in other challenges, you may not get this. And so this sometimes may look to you, he's telling me everything is hidden, so I really already know. But in others, you will not get that. Okay. Most times, the website is going to have some input fields, but this I don't see. But when we click on view source, we don't see anything. And when we click on submit, and nothing except a pop-up come to us and saying, nice try. The flag is hidden in the page source. And then it goes ahead and tell us, press use Control U. So I don't know what Control U is, but if you've been reading well, that's, you know that if I press Control U, it's basically going to view the source code. Actually, I've just pressed the Control U, which I could even do by just right-clicking on the page, and then I come and say view. I should say view source code, but it's telling me view selection code. It is not right because I click on a wrong part. I don't know. I don't know why it's doing that. But what I expect, I expect to see view page source, not view selection source. Someone is giving us a hint, yes? Okay, so this I expected some in from someone, but
yes, sir. It's,
yes,
it's because you've highlighted text. You first unhighlight text, then you can be able to right click and see view source.
Sorry.
Stop unhighlighting. When you go back to that website, you have highlighted some text. So now it should work now that you have unhighlighted.
Yeah, I see it working. It's just because now the event was looking at what I had highlighted, and that is why it was just talking.
Obia, turn on your microphone again. I'd muted everyone.
Alfred, your microphone is muted. The microphone is muted.
Alfred, please unmute your mic.
Sorry for that. I don't know when was that time the mic was mute, and I really don't know. Okay, but we can proceed. Joel, where had you stopped listening to the voice? Do I need to go back?
When you were looking at the source code.
Okay, interesting. So I told you, like, when you open your challenge, so one of the things you need to look at is, I see people solving. I don't know, they had to wait for this. Anyway, that's nice. That means someone has picked a concept from these conversations and is able to solve the challenges. So you need to look at the name of the challenge may int you. The point is very important, and then the difficulty. This tells you how much time you need to spend on a challenge. And then you also read the description sometimes. So once the challenge is open, then now you need to know what is the first step, what is the next step. So I'm assuming that this developer had not put so many in that we need to press Ctrl U such that we view the source code. The first thing that you have to do is to check the page source, and that is by Ctrl U, or you right click and then you view the page source, which is going to come here. And so when you're viewing the page source, basically you want to look at some comments that might have been left by the developers, because when developers develop the applications, they always we need to hurry because we're running out of time. They're always collaborating, and they may leave some hints for a colleague to complete the task. So those hints, they forget, and then it's passed to the productions with those hints, and those hints are very important. Or sometimes we need to look at some of the JavaScripts that might be available, or some PHP, if in any case also available to us, that might be of interest. So nothing we see sensitive, is just what we're seeing on the UI here. So, and literally we just need to keep going down and going down to see what can we find on this. When we click on that button of submit the flag, this is the JavaScript event that comes to us popping the alert. Well, but as we go down, then we find there is a comment. Normally, if you see the angle sign less than and exclamation ... that is a comment that is normally made in HTML. So this is how developers put their comment while they're talking. In this case, it's the cyberstars welcome, which is our flag according to this training exercise. But in the real world productions, you will find the developer says, please change the password of admin from this to this, or please use this API key to deploy the applications on the cloud, or please, this is the token that we are going to use. So they don't intend to put the comment, but because they're working in a group, they need to, and not all of them are working at the same time. Someone comes, works, finish, then another one comes and picks. So there's a way they communicate. And so if they are communicating by putting their communications on the development applications, this should be dangerous to those developers. But in this training purpose, when you find a flag like this, you don't need to talk too much like the way I'm talking. The only thing is to copy it and go and submit the flag. So without wasting time and without talking to anyone near me, I would come back and then just submit my flag. And again, the point. So you can see it's correct. And here, color changes to green. That means you have solved that challenge. And then you move to the next challenge very fast. Okay, so that is one of the tips that when you approach these web applications, the first thing you want to see is the source code, if you can find. And if you don't find the source code, then you move to another thing, which I will, I think, show that when we reaches another challenge. But keep this in mind. Okay. So we don't need this. And when you solve your challenge also, you need to close and then move to the next challenge. So the next challenge under web security is secure bank. And just we have seen 99 solved, which we expect 200 to have solved this according to number of the students enrolled. Now, also the name, you need to look at it. It may be or may not. And then the descriptions as well. And this, the author, I don't know whether it's important, but not that important. Then the next thing is the link. The author is important. Sometimes, you know, how your author maybe likes football. He can make challenges along football, and you guys understand football very much. So you may find the flag is maybe Maguire, something of that kind. But that is not under web security. That is under OSINT, the open source intelligence. When it comes to web application security, things are different here. So the secure bank, this is also another web applications. Compared to the previous web applications, this has somewhere we can input some data into it. And this is not new to everyone. Everyone knows this is authentication page where it's asking for the username and then the password. Okay, so what? Now, as a person who is testing security, you need to have a different mentality, like the way other system admin or any customer, the fertilizer, the sales manager uses applications. For you here, when you're looking at the application, you look at different perspective because you're a tester. We know that most of the common credentials is admin. And so that's the first thing you do want to test. And before you start going and dumping those too many tools of yours, you first understand how the applications works. Login failed, invalid credentials, try again, and nothing we can do other than just to go back to the login page. Okay, so that means in a way, we need to authenticate this in order to access resources behind this web application. Otherwise, no. But then there is also other functionalities that is forgot password, but when we click, we don't see anything. So to this time, this functionality is not working. Now, in a CTF competition which you are going to, always look at everything that the developers put in the web applications. Like down here is saying hint, sometimes authentication system doesn't properly sanitize user input. What happens if you use special characters in the login page? But like I said, sometimes other CTF challenge, you're not going to get these hints available. So you need to have a methodology somewhere. Okay, what we want to check first is to ensure, now I don't want to make that mistake of highlighting. And then I think I still have somewhere highlighted. Maybe I will refresh. But I don't need, if this is giving me that, I just need to press Ctrl U and then I have to view the source code. So when we're viewing a source code, basically we're also looking at some of those hints that might be available are the comments by the developer or sometimes JavaScript. JavaScripts always contain user information. That's why I keep talking about them. But essentially, we just see a bunch of HTML and CSS and coming down some JavaScript. We don't see that, only just the form which we are submitting. And now we come to the bottom, nothing like comments, like token, like passwords. But to ease your work, sometimes you can just come and say type password to see those are the sensitive things, and you just press Ctrl F, then you can start querying the data inside here. Or you can press the other angle which we found last time, and then the exclamation mark, then you want to put the dot to see whether there's a comment somewhere, because this is only 335 lines of code, but in other web applications you're going to find thousands, millions of lines of code. So you cannot keep scrolling all the time. Somewhere querying would be important. Just press Ctrl F and then you start looking for things you want. Let's come back to this. So viewing source code has not worked. Now, what we know that normally users of the web applications uses what we call the weak passwords and username, like the admin 123 password 1233. So someone would think of, maybe we need to brute force all these, the username and the password, and then find. But it's going to be hard because at first we don't know. Had we put admin and then we put password and then we like this, but we've seen that invalid password, when we have entered a admin, somewhere we would know that, oh, so that means there's a user called admin existing. Now we would go ahead to start enumerating the password. That is easier for us. But in this case, the error is just invalid credentials, so we don't know which one is wrong, which one is right. Okay. Now, something starts to come. While the developers tell us that we need to enter special characters, but even if the developer not said, one of the vulnerabilities that we know is what we call the SQL injections. And it's also under injections in the OWASP top 10. But the OWASP is just talking about the injections, but does not specify the type of injections. But when it comes to, you need to use Google, and I advise you that this is not going to be an exam. This is going to be an exercise that is open. So you need to use your internet, you need to use AI, you need to use any tools that is available to you, watch videos, read books, read white papers. So what we know that SQL injections is one of the vulnerabilities that exists in a web application, in a way that the attackers manipulates the query and then causes some behavior in the backend database. Then it's supposed to return some of the data is not supposed to return. And that is the type of injections that comes under injections, the attacks that comes under injection in the web software, which this developer is telling us to do. Okay, so now that we know that these applications might be vulnerable to SQL injections, maybe before I jumped on that, here, it just manipulates the query sent to the backend database, and then it may return the data that is not supposed to return. But in that case, since the authentication is also implemented via a database, that there are users already exist in the database. So when you log in, it's going to be checked whether these credentials exist in the database. And then if it's correct, then you will be authenticated. So we can then use that attack surface to bypass the authentication page in a way that we will demonstrate here. Which looks it looks something simple, but it's very impactful to any organization. Now, I'm going to enter a quote in the username field, which is a special character. So you would ask, why would you enter code? Why would you go for ampersand? But there are specific quotes that you can enter to break the queries in the most of the databases, Postgres and MySQL database. So I'm going to enter that. And now we can see the internal server error. So now at this point, if you're not this much familiar with the web applications, you'll be like, oh, I think it's a problem, and you can just ignore it. But as a web application security testers, this is already a good thing. That means somewhere you have broken the queries that was being sent to the backend database. And now we're not going to talk about SQL injections because it's something also big. We need to know the different types of SQL injections, the reflected, and then we have the blind SQL injections, and then and so many type like second order coming, something like that. That's not what we can. But in any other challenges that you may face, you may find that the error returned to you is going to say there is an error in the SQL syntax you have entered. So that is also a reflected SQL injections. But some of them you may enter and nothing comes. That means you need to use some other techniques like the error-based, there's time-based, and then out of bound, which you can try to send a request to some of the attack servers you have the control, or in a server you have the control against. We need to go fast. Okay, so this is good to me. But now I cannot manipulate my input fields from here because I don't have much control over the web browser. So I need to bring a tool. And this is now where we are going to use the Burp Suite. So knowing that, I'm just going to come to my terminal and then I just start Burp Suite. And it's very simple. You just start Burp Suite and you press enter, it will open the Burp Suite. Other way, you can just come here and then you also type Burp Suite. And then you click here, it's going to launch the Burp Suite the same way if I press enter from here. So this Burp Suite is the proxy tool that we were talking about that comes pre-installed with the Kali Linux. Now, the other person who knew the automations of the Python would not be wasting time coming to Burp Suite. What the person would just go to is now to go and develop a Python code that is going to start sending requests to this server, and then you put this form field, and then you start doing your work. Like I said, I have a lot of things in front of me. So when I have the tool already available to do all those things, the automation is already done for me. I just have to interact it via graphical user interface. That is so interesting. Yeah, so meanwhile that opens, I'm going to check my chat. Okay. We need to proceed. I don't know why this is hanging. I see someone saying, let us solve the Jupyter. Yes, we're going to solve the Jupyter. Yeah, I did this. Jupyter has no flag. I'm not so sure because some people have solved Jupyter. If I'm not, let me check. I think people have solved Jupyter, so that means it has a flag. Okay, so this is our Burp Suite. When you open it, launches, and just like any other web application, it's also a web application graphical user. So you have tools here available for you. The dashboards, you have all the overview of everything. The targets, we'll see when we load our targets, is going to be available. The proxies, this is where we can intercept the request if you want by clicking on and off. Our intruders, this is where we can do the brute forcing. And then collaborator, you can get the server here, but because we're using community versions, you cannot get a server using this. And then others, which we shall use them. But for the most time, what is going to be important to you is the proxy. And then we have the repeater, which is not yet here, but because of the latest update of 2025, it doesn't bring the repeater here. But when we send the request to the repeater, then it's going to come as a separate window. Okay, so what we do, I would have now goes to my Firefox, and then I have on my extensions here, and then I turn on my Burp Suite. But this is going to be hard because I need to first configure the Burp proxy to look at the local IP address, and then I need to configure the certificate authority to accept the certificate from Burp Suite, which is something long we cannot do here. But when you come to Burp Suite, we already have, when you come to target, there is open browser, there is a pre-inbuilt browser. already, and this is what you should be using. So if you want to advance your career in setting up the proxy, that one you can do another day, and just go to Portsugar, which I'm going to share that resources to you, and then you will know how to configure the BAP suite. But we have already a Chrome, which is a pre-inbuilt browser that you can use everything. So what I'm going to do is to copy the challenge. Actually, I can just copy from here. I think now we are running out of time. So we'll, no, this is not the one. This is Jupyter. We are on Secure Bank. Yeah, so this is what we have. Now, I'm just going to enter the credentials at the admin, which we have already done. And then when I authenticate, it's going to fail, which is nice. But when I come to my BAP suite, now I should see the request coming. Now you can see on a target, now we have the challenge, which is the URL. So ignore this because this was the first one, but we're working on this. And now here is where it's going to be a challenge. I cannot increase the font here. I could, but something hard, and I don't want to spend much of the time there. Okay, so when we see, we come here and then we see this is the request that we sent, and this is the username admin and admin that we sent, and this is the response from the browser, which he was telling us we have invalid credentials, which is still working fine. So now I want to manipulate things here. So where do we manipulate? It's when you right click on the request. You can right click from here, or you can right click from here. Anywhere you can do it. And then you send the request to the what? To the repeater. Another thing I would do is just press Ctrl R, and that would do the same. So now you can see the repeater comes here, which is sometimes, maybe depending, you may find it appearing here, but this is coming as a separate individual, and that's no problem. So the repeater is the part that will allow you to now make changes to your request. And this is the request, by the way, when it's going to the server. But when you're sending, you're using the graphical interface, you may not know what you're sending to the server. All right. Okay, so now what we did in the first one was to put a special character quote, and then we send that, brought the 500 internal errors, which is working the same way. So now when we do this, we know that in a way we have broken some something, because what is happening in the backend is like selects everything from the users table, and where username is equals to admin, but then it's put in a quote somewhere there, and then password is equals to admin or password. Okay, so now this is the query that's supposed to go to the backend, but in a way that you have added another quote somewhere here. So there is now a I need to make this bigger for the community. So when you had another quote like we have done, now this quote is going to lag. There's a dangling quote lacking. It's not closing. And that's where the application is going to verbose and say, no, you have broken something. We don't understand this. Because of this dangling quotes that you have added, and you have broken the SQL queries that was sent. Very nice. Okay. So now when you break like this, you need to find a way of what? Correcting it. And if I already know that, okay, so if I do that, then what I need to do is to just add another quote like this, and that would correct it, so that I have now the quotes closing this, and then there's another quote closing this, and everything is looking good. And this is going to be a valid syntax. So the application should accept that. So I'm going to just add another quote, and then I send a request. Now we can see we no longer have the 500, but still you're not authenticated. because that is not the password. Okay, now when it comes to SQL injections, we know there are very many ways you can achieve that using the operator 1 equals to 1, which is, I think the majority knows that. So that is what we want to try here. Now I'm going to first use a big screen such that whenever I go that side, people already knows. So now what I'm going to do is to say, you check whether the password is admin, or if it's not, just check whether an or equals to 1 operators is something already we know is true. That if anything is true, is true. If one is true, everything is true. So that is what's going to happen. That check if admin is the password, and if it's not, just make everything be true. So basically, this is going to just say, okay, yeah, everything is right. Then it's just going to give us the what? The data behind. So in this case, it's going to bypass the what? The authentication. So let's try whether this is going to work. So I'm going to put here O1 equals to 1. And then what happens here? Now you see the color changes. These ones are in black, but they are supposed to be in blue. So what we need to do is to make sure you URL encode on this. And now you can highlight it and double click. And then where is URL encode? Convert. And then you go to URL encode key characters. But the shortest way is to just click Control U, and that should do the work. But this is going to fail because there is a problem still somewhere. You sent valid queries, but still we know that's not the in front here. That's not the password, so still it's going to error out. So that means something else we need to check. That okay. So if you're telling us that we return everything equals to true, and that means I don't need to know about the password. I just want to ensure that on the username everything is true equals to true. So that means I need to supply the dash comment, and that is used in my SQL and MySQL to comment other things. So when we do that, now it's going to just say, okay, now everything after this comment, we don't want to know. We just want to know what is in this side. So that even if the password is not a domain, we don't care about it. We don't want to know. So that is the payload now we want to supply in our case. So I'm going to come back, and then I will URL the code by pressing Ctrl+Shift+U. Then I come back. Then so I will just apply dash, and then again I need to URL encode it back by pressing Ctrl+U, which I showed that. And then now we see a 200 response. Okay, but now when we click here, we don't see invalid. The highlight is 0. That means somewhere we have bypassed authentications, and now you can see here access granted. Okay, so it means in a way we have logged into the web applications. And if you're good at looking at this raw data, there is a flag. People, CyberStars is going to be our flag format, and that's what you'd be looking at each and every point. And congratulations, you have submitted. So if not good, you just have to right click, copy. You just need to right click and show response in a browser. Then you click copy here, and now you paste it on a browser to show you on a user interface how it would look like. And basically you will see this happen, that congratulations, you have solved, and now you've solved it, and you have the flag. So now what I would do is, without talking to anyone, very fast, when you are doing CTF, if you find a flag, please just rush and submit the flag. So sometimes you may submit and then maybe poor copying, whatever it may, but in this case it is accepted. So I see this is solved. So now what we have learned from this, that we first check the source code, we never found anything. We found authentication page, and we tried some other things. Some of the things which I never tried was to do the brute force. But you people show you seen how I eliminated brute forcing this authentication page because I didn't know the username and I didn't know the password. I cannot start to go and dumping a lot of tools on this because I tried enumerating. I would have tried to enumerate the username, but then looking at the ints that was provided in a CTF wall, it directed me to try SQL injections. But in a real world, you would also list each and every attacks you want to try testing. And then you keep eliminating one by one until you go to the next one. And that's when you bring the tool. Because now you have seen me, I've brought the toolbar suite at this point, but other person would have brought John the Ripper Haskell to start doing a lot of password spraying and brute forcing. So it's better to know where to go. And that's when now you bring the right tool to do the right job. Okay, now we are going to do because we are left with 1 minute only, we need to do the last challenge. And the challenge is Jupyter. Once that is solved, this is interesting. So Jupyter, like I said, the name sometimes may help, but now I don't know how this name is going to help me. Jupyter is like a planet. Are we running some web application in the planet? I don't know. But what is interesting in me is 500 points, and this is a very big point. Imagine if I've solved this only, and I don't solve this and this person has solved this and this 250, me I've solved this 50. That means I'm on top of the scoreboard. So I'm not saying you should rush to the one that has maximum point, but if this one with small points is taking a lot of your time, you need to come to this. But also you should know that when a challenge is having a maximum point, that means the difficulty is also in any case is also high. I would go through to read all these descriptions, and then I will please read the descriptions. I'm saving time because that's why I'm not reading, but that's what you would have to first do, is to read the description. So, but why, anyway, 10:30. I don't know how much time we're supposed to use in this session because we would have solved this challenge also called flag stack. But anyway, let's do this for the purpose of time because we just want to show the methodology. There's nothing big here. So just like in the previous challenge, we also have but now members, please allow me, before I move to the next challenge, I want to come back here because I know someone is asking a question that, but you man, how are you coming up with those things of or 1 equals to 1, the single quote? Now, this is because someone has been reading this OAuth substance and knows how SQL happens and how to exploit it. But to someone like a student who is first time to compete in a CTFs may not know that, but wants to use the tools available to do the job. So this is how you would do, because you don't need to know all these payloads we're sending. But what you need to know is, how can I use the tool? Okay, so I'm going to remove this. And then this is where we started from, where we ended at the mean and everything failed. So I'm not assuming I'm a student, I don't know much, but I have been reading about SQL injections. I know if I send some payloads here, it's going to work, but I don't know much of the payload in my mind. So I'm going to Google and then I find what are the payloads, the SQL payloads. And it's just matter, you go to Google or AI and say, you give me the what? The SQL injections payload that bypasses the authentication page. So the AI is going to give you, or from Google, you're going to find any other source. Now, one of the sources that we would want you to familiar yourself is Actrix. I need to share that link, which some colleagues already are familiar with. And then we have payload, all the things. So that's most of the time you will get your payloads from there, which you need to use. This is going to make me pause a bit because I need to share resources. No, this is not the one I want. Please disregard that. I want this. So oops, now I have something issues with my clipboard. Okay, we can. Okay, as I talked, I will be sharing these resources where the payloads is. But the point I was making is now you need to find some payloads over on the internet that you can use. And here I see a bunch of payloads from the mainnet. I don't want to dump all these payloads because I don't want to be detected. So I'm going to just look for any part that can allow me bypass that authentication. Right? So in my case, I'm just copying the few. But for your case, you can copy the whole payload and then you dump it there. So I'm going to copy this to my clipboard. I think now somewhere that my system is hanging. Then what I'm going to do is to go back to the repeater. So now where do we do the brute forcing when it comes to Bob Suite? You come to the main, and this was the request. So you right click, and then you send to the intruder. But even if I was in the repeater, I would still do the same. Right click and send to the intruder, or control high, it would still do the same. So now, when you here and you have sent the request to the intruder, which I'm going to do again, so that we see something. I think it's taking long. Yeah, it comes. Now you can see when you send the data there, the color changes to red. So you go and click on it. And now what you want to do is to highlight the parameter that you want to do a brute force from. And then you click add. So it's going to add the, put it in a bracket with a kind of a dollar sign. I don't know, the ampersand or dollar sign, something of that. And so when you do that, BAP Suite automatically will select a simple list, but there's so many other payload types that you can put. But for this case, we're going to remain on simple list. And then you need to just paste, because I've already copied it in my clipboard. So I'm going to just paste the payload here. So that means I'm going to say, check all these payloads against this parameter username. And these are SQL injections payload, which if you look at them, one of them will be the one we used when we were doing it manually. So once I've done that, you need to come down here and ensure that the URL encode characters is ticked, because if you don't, then it won't. You remember how I was doing the URL encode manually here. So nice tool, the automation part. Python is done. I mean, user-friendly interface. Just do the work and makes your work simple. I don't need to be, now by this time I would be suffering, debugging my Python code behind whatever. I can make typo mistakes, and then you find you have spent 4 hours on just debugging. But this tool is already just copy paste things and then do the thing, and the work is done. So I have already my parameter selected. I have already pasted my payloads that I want to check. This is a SQL injections payload that I want it to bypass the authentications. So the next thing is to just go start attack. And all this is happening in the intruder. And then no problem, just say okay. So it's going to start brute forcing, just sending those payloads. Because this is a community version, it's going to be slow. You know, free things are very, I don't know, cheap things or free things are not always performing. But with time, as you develop your career, then you need to think of moving to BAP Suite professionals, which will cost you some few dollars. But you know, adding resources to yourself, then you need to put money. Nothing comes on a silver plate. And I think that's what now someone is going to argue with me that, okay, I would have gone for Kaido, because Kaido gives you that capability of the BAP Suite professionals, the speed, without you're paying for the professional versions. So now you can see why someone goes for another tool and that this person remains on that. Okay, let's go and check our tax. So our tax is still going on, but if this was on ABAP Suite Pro, because we have sent few payloads, it would run in less than in milliseconds. And that's why we're able to brute force the OTP password of 4-digit characters just in 1 minute, because we only need to send 1,000 requests. You can see how that would be dangerous to a company that only implements a 4 digits OTP without implementing a rate limit. Okay, seems to be finished. So now, the tips, because we're talking about tips, tricks. When we look at when we send a valid request, whether it has authenticated itself or it has not, it was coming with a 200 okay. So because in some other case you can get a 301, which means a redirect, but everything here, even if it's a fail or it has come in, it's a 200 okay. So when you come here to the intruder, you still have also the status code. So I want to filter data. Like I told you, I'm teaching you tricks that don't need to waste a lot of time. We have a lot of things. So the status code, it's either 200 or 500, and you know 500 is a fail one. So now I'm going to move to the next thing, which is the response header. So when you come to the response header, I can actually, I see 429, and the content length is also big because I'm looking for something abnormal, out of range. That means it's going to be important. So you have the request here, you have the payload being sent, then you have the response. So if I see the highest receive length was 492, but still if I check my response, it's login fail. So that means I'm not yet there. So actually, let me put here invalid so that we don't waste my time. And I'm going to click on setting, then I see on auto scroll. So every time I just click on the request, it is just going to come to this point. So I cannot also rely on the what? The content length. I mean the response received. So I'm going to the length. I think this is the content length, if I'm not lying myself. So now, if I check the upper one, the maximum one is, yeah, thank you. The maximum one is 192. And so when you check on the response header is 200, and then you can see the access granted. So that means this payload work. When I check on this, access granted, this payload works. I check on this payload works, this payload works, this payload works. And this starts to fail. So like over 5-6 payloads works. So that is the advantage of using the automations. If I don't know how to generate my payloads, we need to finish. So now I'm going to use only 5 minutes for the next challenge, since we already now know some methodologies, what to do next. Okay, so just like I'm going to do here is to, this is another challenge, by the way, Jupyter. So Jupyter is another challenge. And when you open that challenge, this is going to bring you through the authentication page. So the first thing which we did was to enter admin, and this is going to fail also. We can see invalid credentials. And now what I'm going to do is do the same thing. Go to BAP Suite. I'm going to open it from there because I want this request to go to the BAP Suite, and then I do the brute forcing if I need to do. Because also this point, I also don't know whether the username is the problem or the password is the problem. So when we do that, when it comes to the target, now I should see the requests. What happened? I don't see the request here. Yeah, so we can see on port 3000, I'm looking for a post request on port 3000, which is this. and this is the one we send. So I can right click and send to the repeater, and if I send, it's 200, okay, but still we have I think this error was what? Invalid credentials, which is also still returned there. Invalid credentials. So now if we say, okay, let's use the other method, let's put a single quote and then see whether we sent. Maybe we shall see a 500, okay, and this time it doesn't work. That means in this case that the SQL injections vulnerability doesn't exist. Everything has been properly parameterized or sanitized in whatever way. So this is where the developer is very nice. Maybe he's checking every input fields and passing through the filter checks or whatever WAF that might avail. So now I cannot go and start. Actually, at this point, I would have rolled out how to SQL query, but someone like, okay, maybe there is some blind or error based something that you can do. But I tell you, even if we go and then let's try this for the community. So even if we now send this request to the repeater, I mean to the intruder, and let me first clear, and then admin, then I can add, because that's where I will send my payload. And I still remain on simple, then I copy my payload, and then I start attack. So nothing is going to work here because the SQL injection vulnerability doesn't exist here. Okay, so now when that happens, what do you need to do? The first thing we say that we can always view the source code. So what I would come is to view my page source code and see if there is any hint that the developer has left here, which was the first thing we do. And right away we see there is a comment here, and we have the username and the domain password, and this is weak. So someone will be like, okay, even if I brute force with the common username and password, it would have found. Yes, it would have found, but in real world or in other CTF challenge that will come on your way, you may not find is using the weak password, because we want to simulate a real organization security where the password policies is being implemented with complexity. So that is going to not work. So this method of viewing source code would take you. So now I have my username, which I have already found, and then my password as password, which I have found, and then I can just go and enter. And this loggers, now we are in the dashboard. And then say, congrats, you have the flag. But nothing else now. We don't see the password. I mean the flag. So we could go back and view the source code, and we don't see only the index.php, which is the pass dashboard being rendered to us is here. So where is the flag? Okay. So, but one thing is, we say that you can inspect the page, which at the same time opens for you the dev tool at the beginning of this. And then we say that other things that you need to look at are the storage. And when you come to the storage, in fact, you come to the cookies, and then you'll click on it. Then you will find the cookies is being set here. Let me, because I have 2 cookies there, let me just log in from here so that we can have a good view. I'm going to increase this page. Okay, so we are logged in. When we right click, we can inspect, and then now this is Chrome. Something is going to change. You will not find the cookies in the storage. Data is going to be under applications, and this is why knowing very many environments is key. So now, but you still come under cookies, then we see the cookie name is flag, and then the value is here, which resembles, sorry, let me write inspect again. So now the cookie value resembles the flag we are looking for, so which is here. So I'm going to just copy it, and then every time I told you you get the flag, you have to just copy and rush with it to send, to submit the flag. So I would come here and then submit my flag, and it's incorrect, but it looks similar to what we need. So I don't know what's happened. Now, this is going to be frustrating. You have the flag, you submit, it's not giving you the point. And some of you is going to be devastated at this point. But since this is not an exams at university, you have the internet. You see, you can just go to Google, or you can go to AI and just ask the AI like to do for you, extract for you. I mean, like literally, you can tell it to do for you anything you need. So I would go to Google, I go to AI or whatever, and then I just need to say, please extract for me the flag, because I know the flag is there, but it's not accepting. And then I will supply it. Oops, what is this? Okay, I think there is issue with my what? With my bi-directional clipboard something. Okay, so no problem. Let me hope it will not ask me for login. But anyway, yeah, this is nice. So extract for me the flag. And then I just give it the flag there. And you leave the AI to do its things. This is what you could have also done it on, just Google it. But if you good, you know what to do, then you know what to do. This AI should not take long. Okay, so now the AI is trying to respond. So I wonder why it's going to take time, but what I know is going to extract for me the flag. But what we know is that the flag, it comes, the browser has done some, oh now, the system is freezing. So what the browser has done is has done some encodings on the flag. That's why you can see some %70 happening somewhere, %70. That means somewhere it has done the encoding. So, and what we know that encoding is URL encoding. But now, why I was using the AI, because I wanted the other person who doesn't know that the encoding is what? The URL. How would it go about is to use the AI. So let's check whether the AI has done something. Okay, so the AI said, yeah, you provided the URL encoded. So now this is where I wanted the other person who doesn't know that the encoding is URL to get the tips from the AI. And now if you know that the encoding is URL encoding, then you can come to these encoders like the cybersecurity and do the URL encoding, and you have the flag. But what's not? The AI goes ahead and does everything also now. It has done the decoding and it's telling you that %3b is the opening closing bracket, and now you have the flag. So now have the flag, and then I'm going to submit the flag and see if it's accepted or not. And this time it's correct. Okay, so many tools could do the URL encoding. You could also come to Burp Suite and under decoder, and then you paste you can paste it here, and then you come to decoder's URL. But this is not the important thing was to that. So you have the flag. The important thing was to first approach the online internet. That is, for this case I use the AI, and then give us what is happening. Now when I know that is URL encoding, now I can use it. Yeah. We are now done with this. So we are off with very many times, 1 hour plus. Anyway, it was not. But at this point, I think I will take, I don't know. There are many questions here. No questions. So, okay. Please, if there is any question, 1 or 2 people can ask, but otherwise, we need to stop. Summarily, what we have done is to look at the web application security as one of the category preparing us for our competitions ahead, post the final and semi-final. And we introduce what a website means and how the website communicates, some of the vulnerabilities that exist in web applications, and other new technologies such as the application programming interface, the large language models, Internet of Things. Then we look at how to use the different tools to audit our web applications or to test its security. And then we also showed some of the tricks that can be used to approach and how to solve some of the web challenges on the platform. So could there be any question, please? You can just unmute yourself if there is one person, but otherwise we can. I will be giving 1 minute only. Okay, so I need to share these resources as we are closing. Portswigger is a very good learning place for someone who wants to get knowing each and everything about web application security. All these attacks available ranging from authentication, vulnerability, pass traversal, command injections, API, web cache deceptions, and some of the client-side attacks, such as the cross-origin request sharing, the new attacks, such as the WebSockets, and as well as advanced topic, the large language modules, the API, GraphQL, and REST API, the web cache poisoning, the HTTP request smuggling, which is something new, which was represented at Black Hat. This is James Kettle, the director research at Portswigger, and prototype explosions, JW attacks. So I encourage you to use this Portswigger Academy. It has very good resource, and please trust me that after you exhausting all these resources at Portswigger, you are going to be someone good in web application security. Thank you very much for attending today. We can keep questions, inquiries on our WhatsApp platform, and if we meet again before the competitions, that's what we're going to do. If not, I wish you luck.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Alfred, and a very good evening to everyone. Please find the link in this chat, in the group, and open it to be able to register. Thank you very much. I have also added it in the chat, so you can all register to take the attendance.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.